So today I'll just go over basic comparisons between Java and C++, some differences, what it's used for, and a lot of resources. I just have a lot of different links to different resources that help you learn both C++ and data structure visualizers. And at the end, I'll have three coding challenges. One will be kind of just a worksheet where you can kind of learn basic syntax if you want to kind of go over that through the worksheet I provide, or you can just look at Geeks for Geeks or W3 schools to look over basic, like how to do an array or a function and things like that. And then the second challenge would be more of like have a prompt and then you have to kind of figure it out. It's not really a hard project. And then the third project is more of a take-home project. We're going to be creating Wordle, and then I have the solution code as well. It's just a good challenge to get used to reading a file, which one of the CS 210 professors has you do eventually for one of the programming assignments. So it's just useful to know how to read and process the information in a file. And then Wordle's kind of fun, so you can create a little game and then have your friends play it with you guys. So yeah. Yeah, probably. Well, C++ is just a general purpose language and object oriented, similar to Java. And by general purpose, that just means it can be used for a lot of different things, like making video games or operating systems, embedded systems. They have a lot of cool GUI stuff and internets of things and applications. Here are just some tips and tricks that I use when learning C++ and completing my programming assignments in CS210. Geeks for Geeks and W3 Schools is a very good resource for just uh, it's a very good resource for understanding different syntax and how to do an array and like functions and starting to get used to that. And then there's just language documentation. Sometimes you can learn some pretty useful things on that. And as I mentioned multiple times already, data structure visualizing tools, basically the way they work, maybe I could show you later, but you just kind of input different numbers and values and organize it in that specific data structure. So that will be very helpful as you're learning things. If you don't really understand something, or it's a homework problem and you're supposed to create the data structure, it's very good to help visualize it. And sometimes creating pseudocode is helpful. If you don't already know C++ and you have a challenge that your professor is giving you to create a program in C++, sometimes just trying to figure out the structure before you start worrying about the syntax is helpful. And then the last tip is kind of just for me. It's something that was very helpful when I was taking data structure. I really like drawing, so kind of trying to visualize the data structure itself, not using the visualizer tools, and just doing it myself, and then helps me understand where all the pointers are going, which is very helpful. And then here's some basic syntax differences between Java and C++. On this end, you have the C++ stuff, and on this end, it's Java. So for Java, you have system.out.print, and in C++, you have std, and then cout, and then you can print like hello world. And then for a new line, it's basically you can either do the same thing as in Java with the slash and the n, or you can use NL. And then instead of a scanner, use cin. And to import a library, you can just use include. And then for the main class, I guess, you just put int main instead of all of these different words. And to import a file, which would also be useful for creating Wordle, here's the difference. You have java.io file, and then you have my reader, and then has next line. But instead, you can put fstream, and you can import that file, that library, and then you can have the input file, which holds the file itself, whether it's a CSV or a text file. And then you can have the input, which is each individual input that's being inputted each time as you take something from the file, and then the delimiter to split all the different words up. And then there's just some like capitalization differences too with certain words, or like Boolean is now just bool instead of Boolean. And then there's more abstraction, like it's easier to object-oriented programming in Java, in my opinion. But yeah, those are the basic differences. Other than that, C++ is basically the same as Java, except for slight syntax differences in the initial setup of like int main. It all the stuff from like loops to switch statements to if-else statements and try catches, from variables and like similar libraries like the string library and the math library is basically the same. all the things you should know from CS 150, and then as you work towards CS 210 and you're in CS 160, like you'll just gain more programming skills. And when you get to CS 210, or if you're already in CS 210, everything should be basically the same. Learning C++ isn't really that scary just due to the mass amounts of similarities. As you saw before, my differences slide wasn't very large. There's just a couple different things, and a lot of them were just like different words like Boolean versus bool. Very easy. And then here's an extra tip in C++. You have to put you either have to put std before you output or input something, or you can just put using namespace std at the very top, and then you don't have to do that at all, which is pretty nice. I think the one downside, which I have never encountered, is that if you use the function foo, that somehow messes with it. But other than that, it's very easy to utilize just using namespace std at the top, and then you can print anything you want without having to use the tedious std. That's the one thing I also like about C++. You just out instead of system.out.print, which is very long. And this is pretty easy. So that's my extra tip. And here I'll just go over some extra resources I have for you guys. There's Geeks for Geeks, W3 Schools. Learn C++ is just a different website that I found that is also very useful. It's kind of similar to W3 Schools or Geeks for Geeks, but it's just a different resource that's there if you don't want to use those two. And then Stack Overflow is very nice. You can ask questions, and you just have a big programming community. And then I included a book and a YouTube video, just a basic crash course for C++ if you just want to go over the syntax through video format or through a book. And at the end of this presentation, I'll be giving you guys a Google Doc, which has all these resources and more, as well as the solutions to all the coding challenges and basic little hints if you kind of don't want to just look at my code, but you kind of want some hints to figure it out yourself. And yeah. And then for data structures, you can go to University of San Francisco Visualization Tools, and that's where you find all the data structure tools. You just input different numbers and different sets of like arrays, and they'll create the data structure for you. You can visualize it. Then I also have a time complexity chart on there as well, which is very nice because then you have all the different time complexities for different things all in one place instead of trying to figure out each one individually, or it's just a good resource to have it all in one place. And then Geeks for Geeks, W3 Schools. I've been advertising that a lot, but it really does help. They have pretty good descriptions of basically every concept in data structures and just going through that. And then YouTube videos, when I was going over sorting algorithms, having somebody go through like different examples was very helpful to me personally. I'm a very big visualizer person, and that's also why I'm recommending a lot of visualizing tools and drawing. But just going over some examples helps you not only understand the concept, but understand how to apply it as well, which will be helpful for tests and just being a good CS major in those things. Yeah. Data structures is very important in, I guess, our field. And this is the first mini coding challenge. So I will be uploading the zip file of the worksheet through Discord, and you guys can download it. And I'll also be putting the Google Doc up there too if you need help. And as I'm going to go do that real quick, and then I'll explain the next two challenges and tips and tricks for getting through those. This first mini coding challenge is kind of just pretty easy. You just go through and you learn some syntax. Yes. Yeah, I can do that as well. Yeah. CLion is an IDE, and it's kind of like IntelliJ, but it's just for C++. You can also just use VS Code if you want as well, and just download and kind of look at the file that I have for you, and then fill it in if you'd like to. I personally just use CLion because that's what my CS210 professor had us use for that class, and that's just what I'm kind of more experienced in. I do know how to use VS Code to some extent, but I haven't really had a class where we used it. I just use that for like tiny little projects that I'm doing on my own. So if you want help with that, I know Everett uses VS Code a lot. If you need help, you can go to him. And if you need help downloading CLion, you can talk to me. But yeah, I'm going to go do that real quick, and then I'll explain the next two challenges.